So I've in the wake of the anniversary of 9/11, it's now 21. It can vote. No, it can drink. Sorry, in America. In the wake of this, you get people talking about the 9/11 attacks. It's like, okay, I'm not saying there are no conspiracies, but I think it's actually worse because I think actually conspiracy theory thinking is a kind of crutch. Because actually it's way worse than there being a conspiracy. The concept of conspiracy implies that there is a personal group of people out there who have sufficient agency to manage events, and I don't think there is. I think it's way worse. In fact, this ties into a series I do now called Our Cyberpunk Dystopia. I'm going to be doing the 3rd episode installment of this this week, I think, because basically, because of the way that technology works and that political progress has been working, every time something dystopian and cyberpunk comes across my timeline, I just save it in a document. And after literally a few weeks, I've just got dozens of these things. I'm like, oh my God, what are we creating here? And that's the point. There's no one at the head of this that's like creating this evil dystopia we're moving into very visibly. It's just the confluence of natural forces that everyone's dragged along by. Yeah, it's emergent. That's exactly right. And I think that we can see the lack of control that the leaders of the world have in the political events that we see. Like, you saw Biden's blood red speech, if we can just get that picture up. Like, it just... That's just the worst optics when effectively declaring war on the Republicans in America, which is bizarre because it's like, this isn't the image of control and strength and security, and someone who knows that everything will be all right.
Palpatine looking well there.
Yes, but this comes out of fear, and that's why it looks so scary, probably. But this is not a man who's in control. You know, this is a man who is worried that things are going to get very out of control very quickly, which is why he goes on about the MAGA Republicans being a violent threat to democracy. So, okay, but that's you showing your hand and how insecure your own position is, right? And this we see in the persecution of the MAGA Republicans, Bannon and various others. If you can go to the next one, Bannon's like, look, they're coming for all of us. So why? How is Steve Bannon, like a bunch of Trump allies who are no longer in power and have no access to the levers of power or anything like that, how are they a threat to the Republic? So, well, that's a good question. And apparently he claimed that 35 Trump allies were recently raided. Again, this is the sort of thing that fearful banana republics do because they're worried that there's going to be some sort of revolution. But, okay, well, that shows that you're not really in control of anything then.
Do we know if has this been fact-checked, this 35 MAGA allies thing?
Well, the claim is from Steve Bannon, and I've seen it reported in places like Newsweek and stuff like that. So I assume that there's some legitimacy to it. No one's telling him they didn't. And the thing is, they did just raid Trump at Mar-a-Lago. So, I mean, it does sound plausible. And Biden did just declare war on the Republicans. So it does sound plausible, frankly. And then you've got, like, look at just the other people in charge. You've got people like Liz Truss. Like, who's Liz Truss? She seems to be lost, completely adrift, as they say,
What are your thoughts on Liz Truss? Who would you have had?
I don't really like any of them.
Right, but you have to choose some.
Whoever was going to be the most relentless.
Is she relentless?
She's doing okay, actually, so far. She's only been like a few days, but she has actually done a few, like, suspending the green levy on energy bills is a good start. That should be abolished. But I mean, there's so much more. Like, if I was given just a year in charge, things would be very.
You had a crack at that.
No, I didn't. But when I do, things will be very different. When I get my 380-seat majority, you'll see things. But the point is, she's been all over the place. She's been a very left-wing, anti-monarchist Remainer, and now she's there meeting the new king as a hardline Brexiteer and quote unquote is going to govern as a conservative.
Do you trust her? Do you believe that?
No, I don't trust any.
Oh, so you think that it's a grift?
No, well, it's hard to say. Like, is it a grift when you're the prime minister?
Well, my point being that do you think she believes the things that she's saying that she believes? Because I think that Boris believed the things that he was saying that he believed. It was like bumbling and...
It's possible. It's possible.
Right.
But who knows? But the point is, the inconsistency of what's going on shows that these people are just not in control. They're not in command. and they are, again, somewhat adrift on the currents of events, right? And so none of them have the kind of, not even just like manual power, but the kind of expertise required to actually be able to control the world in the way that it's very easy to fall into this view of, oh, well, they've got all the power and the money and therefore they control everything. It's like, they're not that smart, frankly.
So how does this link in with the conspiracy theory stuff?
Well, this is the thing about all conspiracy theories, is that if you can get to the next one, because I saw people, newspapers talking about this, conspiracy theories everywhere. It's like, yeah, and the conspiracy theories themselves, it would be nice if there was someone in charge, right? If there was someone controlling world events, because it would, they might be evil, but it implies that if we could just get them to listen,
There's some coordination.
yeah. If they were, or we could get our own good person in charge, to control world events, that would be wonderful, right? But no such thing exists. And I saw this was inspired by this thread by Dave Reboy, because this is a really great summation of it. If we go to the next one, right, it says this: I used to get angry when hearing 9/11 conspiracy theories, but now I understand them. As the country grows more contemptuous of its people, and people correctly see their own country as the gravest threat to their lives and liberty, it's not that hard to imagine your enemy doing every horrible thing you can imagine. For example, libs, even subject matter experts, who should know better, think this way of Putin, Trump, and of all of us. It's common enough analytical trap, but a trap nonetheless. The other engine driving 9/11 conspiracy theories, but very closely aligned with the first, is the assumption is that your enemy is 12 feet tall, that he is hyper-competent, and can accomplish everything he sets out to do. While this sounds scary, it's actually a security blanket. You are firm in the belief that someone is in charge. Replacing that competent person in charge, even if they're evil, with someone who's competent and good becomes a fantasy. This is what QAnon, etc. are. Mm-hmm. The real red pill is that they hate you, they suck at what they do, nobody is in charge, and nobody is coming to save you.
Did you watch Don't Look Up, that movie that was on Netflix? Okay, so it was about an asteroid coming toward Earth, right. And they're talking about how these scientists are desperately trying to tell the world what's going on, and no one's listening. And one of the characters, who's this doctor, has got this amazing quote in there, and she says, "The truth is way more depressing. They're not even smart enough to be as evil as you think."
Yes, that's honestly what I think the final red pill is. It's like all of this, like, the WEF taking over and stuff like that. It's like, I mean, they're going to try, but you wish they were as competent.
Yes.
Because at least you get a predictable result.
One of the things that there is a little bit of cognitive dissonance going on here, because a lot of people will, when it's convenient, on both sides, point at the people in power and say, look at how bumbling and useless they are. Yeah. And yet, when it's convenient, say, look at how cabally and conspiratorial they are. They've obviously orchestrated this. And you go, well, hang on a second, look, they're either completely useless and can't get anything right, or they're the masters of the world. You don't get to have it both ways.
There was the Bilderberg group, the Bilderberg meetings, right? Yes. So I posted this on Getter, if we can just get this up. What? I mean, it's unavailable.
You've been deleted.
Yeah. On Getter? Come on. So if you can get that picture up, please. This is from a book called The Wrong Way Home, which is a book written by a Californian psychologist called Arthur Diekman in the 70s, I think it was. Oh, no, sorry, it was in the 90s, but he was a psychologist in the 70s living in California. And he wrote this book about cults. And I found this to be a fascinating thing, because this is in the section called The Dear Leader, and how the reliance on the leader is one of the key aspects for cult. But he talks about a journalist who broke into the Bilderberg group and snuck into their secret meetings. And he says this: one might imagine that the goal of the Bilderberg must be secretly to attempt to shape the future and the events and seek to profit from them. But in practice, the purpose of the meetings was to assess what had already happened and to figure out how best to respond to it with a view of hanging on to past gains. As in, they're not in charge. And he carries on. He says, "It is not inherently sinister to convene an assembly of wise men, led by those whom the wise believe to be the wisest, but one feels a certain queasiness when, like Dorothy's little dog Toto, one pulls aside the curtain and discovers that the wizards haven't the slightest idea what to do. To insinuate oneself into such company and to return them to the realm of roller disco and headphone radios is like slipping up on the spiral stairway of a transoceanic 747 and into the cockpit only to discover that one is alone there, or there's no one there. The night is dark, the howling storm lies ahead, you descend into the main cabin, and dinner service has been concluded. A number of passengers are noisily airing their complaints, the lights are dim, the movie is about to begin, and so the hideous, grisly secret of Bilderberg is revealed. There's nobody at the controls, folks. We're flying blind. Let's hope there's foam on the runway, friends and neighbours, because we're coming in on a wing and a prayer. And it's like, that is genuinely, I think, the kind of existential dread of the whole thing. Is this is why it'd be better to believe that, like, if you look at the WEF stuff, like when you like the World Economic Forum, right? If you can get to the next one, like they put out this the other day, and this is what really crystallized it. It's like, really, the Somali women's newsroom. They go, oh look, we've got this all women's newsroom. They just talk about the gender pay gap in Somalia, and you can see these are not people who know what's coming next. These are people who are just, well, what do we do? Well, we talk about the gender pay gap. That's all we talk about. Well, put out something about the gender pay gap in Somalia. Oh yeah, this is good, is it? This is impressive. I mean, they put up this article the other day on the WEF website, and again, like, they don't know what's happening, and they actually do admit it. They say the current global outlook can feel bleak and confusing, with war and inflation throwing the future into uncertainty. And so here's a series of books you might want to read because we've read them, and it's like, but you don't know. You don't know. We are flying blind into the storm, and let's just hope it goes all right, because there's no one at the helm.
Perhaps that's more comforting for people to believe. I think it genuinely is more comforting for people to hope that the world is the malign plan of some evil overlord, because somehow that's more comforting than the fact that it's random chance.
Oh, it's totally more comforting, because you could win against the evil overlord. You could be Frodo throwing the ring into Mordor and destroying Sauron. There's a heroic story there where a victory can be attained. Mm-hmm. You can't have a victory against nothing.
Yes.
Just chaos.
We were talking about the fact that conspiracy theories, a lot of the time, seem to lay a lot at the feet of the people who are significantly less competent than it seems. And what you see from the leaders in those times when they start to lose control are more grasping and power grabbing. Yeah. And I think that that's definitely a mechanism that people should look out for. You go, look, for almost all of human history, norms and laws were enforced bottom up.
Yeah.
They were emergent.
Cultural habits.
What do you think jealousy or anger is? What is that sense of indignation that you feel? That is a genetic predisposition toward unfairness. Now, because not everyone agrees on what that means, you have to then legislate it. Then in order to be able to legislate it, you need to have somebody that can enforce it, which means it needs to be written down, which means that you need a wing that can go and do it, which is the police or the HMRC or whoever. But as the top down and the bottom up begin to diverge, the only way that the top down can continue to keep hold of control is to grab harder. Yeah.
And that's what you see with Biden. You can see his position is becoming shakier and shakier, and every day something stupid comes out. But anyway, that's basically my view on the real red pill. It's there's no one coming to save us.
Let me finish off with this. So this was a topic called compensatory control. So this is Matthew Syed in the Times. This was at the beginning of COVID a couple of years ago. Psychologists have conducted experiments to shed light on why people lose or at least suspend rationality. One experiment asked people to imagine going to a doctor to hear an uncertain medical diagnosis. Such people were significantly more likely to express the belief that God was in control of their lives. Another asked participants to imagine a time of deep uncertainty when they feared for their jobs or the health of their children. They were far more likely to see a pattern in meaningless static or to infer that two random events were connected. This is such a common finding that psychologists have given it a name: compensatory control. When we feel uncertain, when randomness intrudes upon our lives, we respond by reintroducing order in some other way. Superstitions and conspiracy theories speak to this need. It is not easy to accept that important events are shaped by random forces. This is why, for some, it makes more sense to believe that we are threatened by the grand plans of malign scientists than some chance mutation of a silly little microbe.
That really does hammer the point home, doesn't it? But I just want to be clear. This is not to say that there are no conspiracies. Right. This is not to say there are no nefarious people working behind the scenes. I think there are, actually. But the important thing, I think, is to remember that they are limited in a way that you would be limited. Imagine yourself. You would be just as limited. Like, okay, so Klaus Schwab has got loads of money. He's got, like, say, analysts who are researching constantly. Okay, but what do they actually know? They're actually taken away from the world. They're not like living in the actual world, so they can't see the forces as they're moving. Whereas a regular person can see the forces. They are in the forces, and so it's it's not to say there aren't conspiracies and they're not trying to do this, but it's to remember that they are also limited in their power. And there's a great meme that goes around that every time I see it, I think, yeah, that is actually very heartening. If the situation was hopeless, then their propaganda would not be necessary. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, because the only reason that they continue to push is that they think that there's a way out of this.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. And if you wouldn't need to, I don't propagandize when if I trapped a mouse in a box or something, I wouldn't propagandize the mouse saying you can't get out of here.
Yes.
So I know it can't get out.
Yes.
I don't care, and that makes it puts it in perspective that the great effort to propagandize us is because actually this is all very fragile. And actually, it could come tumbling down quite quickly. Only a couple of missed meals, and things change,
If you appreciated that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content we have on the site, such as this article from Daisy on what a woman isn't. And if you want to follow what else we're putting out, you can follow us on Getter at lotuseaters_com on Getter. Thank you and goodbye.